Welcome to TXAPA Live. My name is Jim Warren. I got Pravat Karki here with TxDOT, the Materials and Test Division, and today we're going to talk about the liquid asphalt sampling and testing program. Pravat, welcome to TXAPA Live.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Hey, tell us about yourself. What's your background? How did you get involved in this crazy stuff?
Well, I started in asphalt business back in 2008 when I started as a graduate student in University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Oh, Nebraska, okay.
Yes,
all right.
So I was in a very cold season, cold
that
region
is,
there.
Yeah, that's cold. That's thermal cracking.
Yep, so I knew all the low temperature cracking and everything, right?
Okay.
So I said, well, I need to know hot temperature. So I went to UT Austin for my PhD back in 2012. And then I said, okay, I will go to College Station. And then that is where I got my research career started.
Oh, so you went to UT and A&M.
Yeah, A&M as a researcher.
Wow,
so I worked there for 6 years until December of 2020.
So who do you root for football?
I don't want to say that. I'll try to keep it. I have
Who's
three
ever winning,
city,
right?
Yep.
Who's ever winning.
Yep,
All right.
yep.
As long as they're not playing each other, you root for your home team, right?
Yes, that's what I do.
Awesome, awesome.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming. We appreciate you coming here today.
Thank you very much for the invitation as well.
Why do you like binders? Why do you? I mean, everybody likes a different thing. I mean, why is this like your area?
Well, when I started as a graduate student, it was just a regular graduate student course, and when I got into more of the binder classes and then the asphalt mixer classes, I like the idea of it glues everything, right? And and in a way, it's kind of social material in that sense. It will combine everything, and the idea is gluing two or more aggregates together and make sure trucks can roll on the top of that, right?
Sure,
that intrigued me a lot, and that's what I started working mixture, and then ultimately, asphalt binder, where I am right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, the binder stuff sure can get complicated. And we look at all the. I mean, we were talking the other day about all the tests that are run. On the aggregate beforehand, all the tests that are run on the binder, and then all the tests that are run on the mix. Here's a sample of mix, that we use in our class, and it's like, this is really tested a lot. But these samples, most of it's rock, but that glue is super important.
It is.
And we are learning more and more about it every day, it seems like.
Yes, and not one glue will work with every type of material, right? And we need to have a specific glue, special properties of that glue, and we need to know how to apply, what temperature to apply, and how much to apply as well, and how much we need to wait to make it sure it has a rigid frame, right? It is a good structure there.
Absolutely.
And how long it will last. Not all glue will last longer as well. So application, the performance, everything needs to be counted when we are selecting glue, and that's the same case with asphalt binder.
Putting the right thing in the right place.
That's
absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into talking about TxDOT's liquid asphalt sampling and testing program, which you are in charge of, right? That's your baby, right?
Yes, it is a part of my branch where I'm the manager here, so yes.
So what's all involved with that?
Asphalt quality program that we have in TxDOT is basically looking at the material used as a glue, as a binder in the field, in the flexible pavement section in TxDOT, in the state of Texas, everywhere. We want to make sure a good quality binder is placed there so that we can have a reliance on how long it will last, right? And that comes with quality control, not only from when it is used in the project, but from the get-go when it is being produced as well. Selecting a raw material, selecting a good binder, modifier, that's the part of the supplier. Once it gets done there, it's produced there, we want to make sure that is sent to us so we can certify what the spec says that meets the spec there. And that way we have a kind of more dependency on the material. Yeah, it is a good binder, can be used in the district, and then district can go, well, it is certified by Asphalt Binder Lab in MTD. Then they can go back and say, yeah, it is certified material, I want to use that, right? Instead of selecting any material in the market, we want to say certified material is used in the project there.
Absolutely. And so you're not talking just about the binders used in asphalt. We're talking about emulsions used in tack coat, seal coat materials, any of the asphalt products in 300
Yes, that's
right?
correct.
And there's a lot of places those materials can be used. So you guys have got a lot of work to do, right?
Yes, we have a lot of material included in item 300, and obviously based on different grades, there are different kinds of applications.
Yeah.
And that application is where we really want to see that spec requirement are matching with what is the application there, right? And
Right, absolutely.
that's what we're looking for.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and it all starts with the sample, right?
It all starts with sample.
Now I'm going to give you a quiz. Okay. Now you better pass this quiz. Okay. Now
Well,
we
we'll
got,
try,
we
we'll
got
try.
we got 2 cans here. Now we do this a lot in some of the other stuff we do. Now we've got a metal can and a plastic jar. All right. So which one does the liquid asphalt, the hot sample, go in?
It will go to the metal
always
because
goes
we'll
in
make
the metal
sure
can.
it is always in the metal.
And what sample does the emulsion go in?
Emulsion goes to always a plastic
Always,
jar
never this.
with the open end on the
Right.
on the out.
So, and then we always talk about this. It's again, it's got a little schmutz on the outside, but we always start with a clean container. We never reuse containers for a sample,
That's true.
ever. And on the emulsions, what's super important is before this is sent in, we get all the air out of the sample. And you guys told me the trick one time is they'll fill it most of the way up, and then they'll squeeze it a little bit, and then put the lid on. And there still should be a little air gap in there, right? But before we do all this, what needs to go on the can and what needs to go on the jar?
Yes, it should be labeled, right? Any material, you know, if you go to any safety instruction, it needs to be labeled because I need to recognize that's the grade I need to check. That's the district that sent that sample or the supplier that produced the material. So we want to line with that, you know, particular information.
Because when all these cans look exactly alike, right?
Sure.
So when you guys get it, you're going to test it for the product that it's supposed to be, right?
Yes. So if it is a 64-22, but it was labeled different or not labeled, we will not know what it is, right? And we may be in a situation, it may impact the safety because it may come a AC sample or something else.
And you mentioned an issue just before. Tell me about that.
Yes. So there may be a sample that will be a cutback labeled as AC or something different. We may put in oven and with cutback, it has a lot of oil, right? And that can catch fire pretty soon. That means there is a safety hazard as well when it is a sample that is not identified as it is in the can as well.
Right. So we want to make sure all the samples that are taken are properly labeled, right? And then once they're labeled, they're logged into the system properly, right?
Yes, we do have a requirement to have a barcode on the can. That way I can scan it, identify it, and test the right test. So it is always about selecting right labels because we want to make sure that is readable. The barcode is readable.
Absolutely.
If you put on the horizontal, the round structure, the barcode cannot read it. So we need to make sure barcode is always vertical from top to bottom on the can as well.
Okay, we can't go this way, we gotta go this way. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So it starts out with a clean can or a clean jar, right?
Right.
We write all the project and all the information that's supposed to be on it. Now, where do I get that information from?
There are 2 locations. One is 500C. That's a text 500C. That's the test process. It describes what kind of cans to be used on what kind of grades.
And then what needs to actually be on the can, right?
Yes, and then that is the information we have in the asphalt binder guidance there. So we have some example of what can be.
We'll put a link to that in here, so you can get a copy of that. And what does the guidance tell us to do?
Guidance is by name is guide what to do, what not to do, right? And that's what the document says. There is a section for how to sample it, how many sample we need. For example, hot applied, we usually look for 2 cans from the supplier. But when it is a district sample, 1 sample.
1 sample.
For the project sample.
So I know if I'm going to take a project sample, what kind of can, what kind of container, how many samples I need what needs to be on the can, right?
And how much.
And how much I need, right? So there's never if you follow the guidance, shouldn't be any issues.
Yes, if you just in line with what we have in the guidance, if you follow, we will not have a problem of is not enough, or you will not see it cannot be tested one particular test because there is not enough.
Yeah, that would be a problem is you're almost through and you don't have enough material to finish.
Yes, that will be a problem.
Does
because
that happen every once in a while?
Yeah, it does happen, but it's not a very often happening situation.
Because
but
people are following the guidance and they're
Yes.
following the rules.
And Asphalt Binder Lab has been training a district, and we have been also getting very good feedback from supplier. All are doing what they need to be.
Okay.
There is always these rare cases, and that's what we need to deal with. And that's the purpose of this conversation, right? To convey the message that we need to label the can, we need to put the right size, right amount, and right label on the can.
Okay.
That's the purpose here as well.
So, a lot of times if we're taking a hot sample at the asphalt plant, the contractor's got to wear all the PPE, the long sleeves, the gloves, the face mask, all that sort of stuff, because you're dealing with a hot sample. And then, I get the sample, I've got the can labeled, I get the sample. Now, when the contractor doesn't do the entering in the site manager, that the department has to do that, right?
Yeah, there are certified inspector who does have a different response. So district is in charge of who does log there.
So my question is, okay, now I've got the sample. I'm going to give it to you. I got to let it cool off. I can't give you a hot sample.
Right.
Now that establishes a term that we've been talking about here, this chain of custody. And how important that chain of custody is in the big scheme of things, because we don't want to have a chance of the wrong sample. If I just take a bunch of samples and I lay all these cans around and they're not labeled properly, you could get a sample thinking it's a PG 64 or 7622 or 6422, and it or a safety issue like you mentioned earlier, and I end up catches on fire or something. But if it goes all the way through the testing and the testing says it's something that we don't think it is, now we start a whole big argument maybe.
Yes.
Of this kind of stuff. So we want to make sure, and again, I hate to dwell on this, but I hate to sound more simplistic than it is, but we got to make sure what's in the can is what's written on the can, and then that's how it's tested, so we can evaluate it based on that. Because once we get into the testing, your guys don't know. They're going to pop the lid off, and it's black and sticky, and they're going to go about doing their stuff.
It
right?
is the same for anything, right?
Exactly.
Any material that is a PG, it is always black, stop, hardened already, so we'll never know, right? So I usually say is a letter to another person. All the labels are letter to another person, showing this is the information I have. You can rely on that, and we want to make sure not only the sample chain of custody, but the information chain of custody. We need that information relayed from the person who actually sampled to the person who is testing, who is stamping the sample as pass or fail.
And that's part of this. All that information goes in the site manager when the sample is entered in. And then they generate the barcode that goes on the sample, right?
Yes. So when we have a person logging the sample, we need to make sure the sample is obviously labeled already,
right?
Because the logger may be a different person than a sampler, right? We want to make sure when it is a sample collected in the field, let's not have 5 cans with no labels and then we transport to the person who is logging there. So we want to make sure there is some information already for the person who is logging the sample, and that may be the same person or different person. That information should be relayed there, right? Once we have that, when the person is logging, all the information in the can, all the BOL, the bill of lading that is received from the supplier through the trucker, we want to make sure that bill is matching or the grade is matching the can, right? And that's the key there. The certification number is in the BOL. That means it is a certified material, and that information is what is needed in site manager. The date the material was received in the project, the certification number for that grade, for that supplier, for that particular period, because it is all tied to period here. So 3 months right now, right? Every supplier.
Right, because you changed that this year, right?
Yes, early this year we said instead of 1 month, we'll certify for 3 months, and that is always with a C number, or that's a lab number or seal number.
Gotcha.
So we need to have all this information from the BOL transfer, all the information the sampler has taken, that needs to be transferred, and there may be a remark saying this was sampled another day, or it was 3 cans. All the additional information can be still added as a remark there. So
in site manager, in the remarks area.
Yes. Whatever is added in remarks section or intended use, that's the field we call, that transferred there in the site manager.
And all that how to do all that, that's all in the guidance document.
Yes, it has a very
And
step
again,
by
we'll put that note, we'll put that link up here so you guys can get a copy of that.
And it has a step-by-step process, and it has also screenshots, so that way it's very friendly. We will really encourage everyone who is logging a sample
So I
to
can
go
even
through.
probably do it.
Yes, if you have access to Site Manager, yes, that's
Which I
correct.
don't.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so we've got the sample. The sample's logged in now. Now, when do we ship it?
And that's the key. The same document we're talking about, the guidance document also say, please, if it is a sample today, within next 3 days, please ship the sample. That means the logging should be happening within these 3 days, and then sample should be shipped.
Okay.
With the barcode, with the 202, that's what the print of all the information that is input in the
goes on the
Site
can,
Manager.
on the outside of
Yes.
it, right.
So there is also on the box outside, we also have a barcode outside, so we
Right.
can actually know what is in the box as well.
So when it comes to MTDs, where it come to the loading dock, when
Yes.
FedEx or UPS or whoever delivers it, what happens then?
So once we receive in the dock, we have a back end of the building. There is a dock area.
Okay.
Once it is received, it is scanned. It's scanned on the box. That way we know exactly what came in that box. It gets going to the binder lab after that.
So then it logs in the date that it was received.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
And that's the day you see in the report is the receipt date on the binder lab, not the
Okay.
binder, the receipt date on the received dock, basically.
Okay.
If the dock receives, let's say today, right now is 3:45
Thursday.
somewhere,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It may be received in the binder lab next day.
Okay.
Okay, so there
Okay.
may be a lag of 1 day, but usually happens the same day. So
Right.
receipt date most likely representing the same day it is received in the dock in the bind lab.
Okay.
But there may be 1 day difference because if it is on Friday afternoon, received in a dock, it may come on Monday, right? And
Gotcha.
that lag is there obviously.
Okay. All right.
That's a practical lag there.
All right, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, you know, you've received it, you've logged it in, you know what date you've received it. It gets moved over to the lab. Now, obviously, we're not doing one test on it. We're
not
doing
doing
a
that.
lot of tests. Now, can you walk us through that? I mean, are you doing like one test and the next test and the next test, or is a lot of stuff happening all at once with a can as it goes through? What's the flow as it goes through the system?
No, that's a very good question because we do handle, and I will say last year, we handled around 6,000 plus sample.
Over 6,000 samples.
Yes, that's what 2021.
Wow.
And then this year we may have a little bit fewer than last year because of less certification sample.
Okay.
But we're almost reaching 4,000 this year.
Wow.
So we'll be still testing a lot.
4,000 samples.
Yep.
5 days a week, not necessarily. That's a lot of stuff every day.
And then multiply that each sample with minimum 5 tests. So
5 tests?
It is a lot of testing that needs to go there, like 20,000 this year alone, right? That means, you know, we need to really sync the flow. We need to really have an organized flow. That way we can recognize what sample it is. So that comes to our what we call a 202 station in the binder lab.
Okay.
Every sample is received on that particular area of the lab.
They're all coming through the same door, if you will. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
an inlet.
All right.
Once it is received, our technician will go and see what sample it is. Has that label there? It has a barcode or not? Does it come with any document?
Okay.
Sometimes it may just come with a 202 or maybe without a 202.
Okay.
Where there may be just barcode.
The 202 is the form that's printed out that goes along with it, but all that stuff is electronic as well.
Yes,
In Site Manager.
you can still access as long as it is recognized in Site Manager or I log there. You can always print the 202, and that's what the district is always sending us, and
Gotcha.
that's the information our technician will read. We'll want to verify what is written in the can is the same as in 202.
check.
We want to make sure that
Okay.
happens there. We also open the can, because we need to verify that's hot applied, and we, as we explained,
Right.
it may be gone to the oven while it is a cut back level as a AC, right? So we want to make sure that doesn't happen as well.
Gotcha.
So we want to
Gotcha.
check all the verification. Once all this
And
information,
even a little safety check in there.
yes, we need
Okay.
to make sure. Yep.
Okay.
So once that is logged based on the hot applied and based on the, I'll say, weight applied or the spray applied in that sense,
Okay.
emulsion or cut back, we do have different location in the lab
Okay.
that get stored, and those samples are assigned based on first come first. So if it coming, let's say I have 10 sample, whichever comes first, we want to first test that.
First in, first out.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the process.
I don't get to move to the front of the line or
No,
whatever.
there are priorities sometimes because
Okay.
there is a rapid setting emulsion, right? We don't want to wait that for another 10 sample to complete it. So that's a
Right.
different story.
Okay.
There may be some particular project sample that is reactivated, there is a failure happening. We
Okay.
want to see that tested more quicker.
Okay.
And we want to see as much as fast, right, as well.
But in general, as they come in, they're tested.
That's correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
All
So we
right.
want to have that flow, and then everybody is assigned based on what certification they have. So Jim, you may have a certification for DSR, I may have BBR. I'm not going to switch the test.
Right.
I always do the BBR, you always do the DSR,
Because
right?
the testing is very precise. There's a lot of little minutia in that testing to make sure everything's done properly, and you can't just take an asphalt guy that's doing mix testing and throw him in a lab and put him on a BBR or a DSR or a dynamic shear rheometer or a bending beam rheometer and expect them to know it, because this has been beat up, but this is about the size of a sample for a BBR, and
That's
it's got to
the
be
biggest sample you can see. Think about
Yeah.
asphalt binder.
And if when it's out, it can bend and twist and torque, and these have to be molded properly and poured properly and trimmed properly, and there's a lot of work that goes into making these samples.
And involves right temperature, right amount of time to cure, right amount of time to put in the freezer. So
Right.
time and temperature, those are the two key words I will always say about binder. We need to make sure the time is followed and the steps, basically the time,
Right.
and then we always need to follow the temperature, because
Right.
even a 0.1 degree difference in temperature can change the properties.
0.1 degrees. 0.1 degrees. And I can't even think that. That's a good point. Now, I know what, in thinking about that, I know TxDOT is established, or they're in the process of establishing a binder certification program.
That's correct.
And we don't have that currently, but we're moving in that direction to help build more confidence and more with both sides, from you and from the industry, to say, hey, if you're running the test, you're certified to run a test, I'm certified to run a test, and so we can compare our numbers and have confidence that we're both running the test properly. And that's gonna, I know HMAC has got that contract now, and I know Corey is in the process of trying to set his lab up and is doing visits right now to make sure to have the lab set up properly, and so in 23 we're trying to get that going in 23, right?
Yes, that is a process we started just recently.
Yeah.
So TXAPA's HMAC has the contract right now.
Right.
That is establishing a lab
Right.
that can be used to certify the technician. But when I say certified, that includes training as well.
Right.
So we are not just certifying you are good on these tests, but we are saying this is how you need to test as well. So we are going to have that training program.
Because like you said, and I know that there's certain ways, like you handle the material, and everybody to handle it the certain way to make sure we don't damage the sample, or we maintain consistency all the way through. Because anybody doing testing, if you do testing, everybody comes up with kind of like little shortcuts once in a while, and the binder testing, we can't do that. We gotta really follow the line there with all the testing.
Yes, and to that point, the reason to have that certification program is we want to know exact same meaning of the same word, right?
Right.
Meaning interpretation of the test method.
Right.
What TxDOT method means, what AS2 method means, what ASTM method means. We want to mean the same thing, and we
Correct.
want to follow the same thing.
Right.
And that's what has been a practice and has been a discussion. Let's do this way. That is, all the 50 supplier we have right now, 50 supplier
50.
we have.
Wow.
For materials and our test divisions MPL on for asphalt binder alone, we have 50 different supplier. So if I give you line and then all 50 plus TxDOT is interpreting that different meaning,
Sure.
then you cannot have a cohesion, you cannot have a uniform kind of properties, right? And
Sure,
their properties
absolutely.
were tested. Supplier may say I have 101 as a penetration value, I may
Right.
have a very different number. And
Right.
if there is a misinterpretation of that line, we want to make sure that is same, right? And
That
that's
makes
the
sense.
purpose. And
That makes sense.
Asphalt Binder Lab already has a training and certification program. All the technicians we work with in the Binder Lab, they are trained and certified by our engineers.
Okay.
But we want to have that program for the whole state.
Everybody.
Everybody that does a test that supplies a binder to TxDOT project, those suppliers will be required to be used in this certification program. We
okay.
are going to enroll that program very soon, but right now we are developing that program.
Yeah,
So
lot
by
of
end,
work there. Lot
the
of work
target
there.
is May 2023.
Okay.
We're hoping to go that in and then maybe quicker. We'll see.
Depending how quickly we can get everything put together.
That's
Awesome.
right. That's
Awesome.
right.
Okay, so your guys have received the samples and they've been delegated to the person that's running the specific test, right?
That's correct.
And so that testing then goes on, and so they're constantly running BBRs all day or DSRs all day or whatever testing that they're running. What's like for a PG binder? What's typically the kind of how long does that take to do all those tests?
In terms of PG, depends on what kind of tests are on those PG grade, and some of the PG has a more intense test because
Right.
it has polymer in it or
Right.
it has more requirement.
Okay.
So we do more tests, but typically a PG binder when received needs to be heated, needs to go to the DSR just to find as is properties,
Right.
or that's what we call DSR original. So we want to see as is properties of that.
Right.
We may do some rotational viscometer based on what is the application rate or
Right.
what is the temperature. It will be a
Right.
favorable temperature
Right.
as is properties, I will
Okay,
say.
okay.
That's usually starts with DSR. We also want to find the specific gravity of that material. So that's also is as is properties or the original binder properties, and then we will start the RTFO. So
The aging.
the aging. So RTFO is a simulation of what happens when it is being mixed in the plant
The
and
rolling
being placed.
thin film oven test.
That's
Right,
correct. That's the
right.
good acronym there.
Okay.
By name, it is rolling thin flame oven. That means we have to keep rolling,
Right.
and it goes around 85 minutes. But that process has to be complete with several preparation, the test itself, and the post preparation.
So we're looking an couple hours to just age that original material, and then it's got to be taken out of the samples and then tested.
Yes. So
Again.
test again for DSR. So we want to know what is the properties after it is aged.
Right.
So that's the property that we call is a short-term age, like the
Short-term aging.
properties just after the pavement has been constructed.
Okay.
That's what it is simulating there.
Right.
Okay, that property we still need to not only as is, but once it is used in the project, it is constructed, it is already laid out in the field, we want to see that properties. And these two key properties are what we call rotting parameter properties or rotting properties.
Rotting
We want
properties.
to see that particular temperature is still good to use, right? If it's 64, that means it's the maximum temperature we can apply.
Got it.
We want to make sure that place that goes to 70 at highest should not use that 64 binder, right? So
Gotcha.
we want to make sure the
It
softness.
works within that range.
Yes, that's
that it's
correct.
designated to do that, and then we age it again, right?
Yeah, we age again because we need to also see for, let's say, another 5 years or 10 years, the aging does not stop.
Right.
Binder will still keep aging because there is oxygen outside, there is
Right.
heat outside, so
Right.
it will still be aging, and we want to simulate, but we cannot wait for 5 years, right? I'll be old and we all are getting old, right? So we don't want to wait for 5 years. So what we do is simulation.
Right.
That means we do a mechanical simulation, meaning we put in a pressure is vessel, PAV. So we have aging, meaning we have oxygen,
Right.
we have also high temperature, 100 degrees Celsius. We
And-
wait for 40 years,
Right.
20 hours. And 40
20
years.
hours.
Yep, so 20
Okay,
hours. So
20
we
hours.
start usually, it goes to overnight, next day it is prepared, and then we take the sample out, and that's the sample you are showing. When the sample is already melted, obviously at high temperature, we cast them as a beam.
Okay.
And we try to simulate what it happens if it is a beam like what is in the ceiling in our roofs there.
Okay,
And
all
we
right.
want to see, put a pressure on the middle and see what is the deflection, what is the
Okay.
rate. Does the binder relaxes? How stiff it is at low temperature, and low temperature is critical because if there is a day that happens a very low temperature, we want to see thermal cracking does not happen, right?
So if it's a PG 7622, the 76 minus 22, what temperature do we test it at?
So always a PG plus 10, that's what we usually call.
Okay.
So if it is a low temperature grade that we need to define, or the test that needs to be done, if it is minus 22 as the grade, 76 minus 22 is tested at minus 22 plus 10, that means minus 12.
Okay.
That's because all the machine cannot go to that low temperature.
Okay.
So there is a shift that's happened, but we have very good mechanistic analysis that converts that properties to minus 22.
Because these are actually, they're sitting in glycol, like a antifreeze.
Yeah, it's kind of inert liquid in that
Right.
sense. It does not react with the binder,
Right.
but it gives you enough temperature.
You don't want
And
to stick your hand in there.
we do not want to. We do not want to.
Use the tongs.
Yeah, post-bright. We don't want to have that, right?
So you've got as received condition
Yeah,
that you're going
original
to test.
binders.
You've got short-term oven aging with the rolling thin film oven. You've got long-term aging with the PAV. And so you're testing it, actually, you're testing each binder at three different conditions, right?
Yes, and that particular sample we talk about the BBR,
Yeah.
the same batch is also used for the PAB DSR.
Okay.
So that is looking at the fatigue. So this is looking as a cracking for the thermal. There is no load. The sudden temperature drops in the field. What happens, right?
Right.
And that can happen one time, but that one day can impact a lot.
Sure.
If it is cracking, we cannot go back.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
Once
it's cracked, you can't go back. There you go.
So it is a micro crack, it starts and it will just propagate more and more.
Gotcha.
So that's there, but we also want to see fatigue cracking when there is a load, not a low temperature, but a lot of traffic on the same road.
Repetitive load.
Yeah,
Okay.
repetitive load,
Okay.
the same truck, same car or many truck at the same location, right?
Gotcha.
And the number of traffic, right, basically. If that creates some kind of fatigue, if you see it is an alligator kind of skin cracking, that's what we call fatigue test.
Right.
So we do test at intermediate temperature because they usually happens at intermediate temperature,
Gotcha.
as the name defines itself.
So there's a lot of testing that's going on here. We're really looking at this property of the binder kind of throughout its, simulating kind of throughout its life, or from initial to, we can't go 50 years, but at least initially build it during its lifetime to see what it's going to perform like for thermal and fatigue cracking and those kinds of things. So on the binders itself, again, we're doing a lot of testing to really kind of figure out what's going on here. So it's a lot of information, So we go through that. Okay, so that's a liquid binders, like a PG binders. What about an emulsion, like a tack material or a seal coat material, that kind of? How long does that typically take? We don't do all the same tests for that. do we?
No, as I described in hot applied, depends on the grade. It has some different variety of the test that
Right,
involves.
right.
If it is a polymer modified, we do elastic recovery and some other tests
Okay.
on the top of what already described.
Okay.
But when you go to emulsion is a very different category. That's what I would call weight applied, or it is a liquid applied.
Okay.
And we don't need to heat it because it is already liquid.
Right.
We can spray with a spray bar,
Okay.
the system we have in
Okay.
the field. But what we want to look at is it sprayable or can be applied? That's the first question always, right?
Okay.
Just like rotational viscometer on the PG side,
Okay.
we also look into several viscosity. Can we apply? What is the frequency or what
Okay.
is the viscosity of that material?
All
If it's
right.
too viscous, less viscous. Right?
Right.
We need to adjust the rate based on that.
Right.
So that's one key point there.
Okay.
Second is emulsion is made of water and asphalt, the same hot applied but emulsified.
Right.
And that
So you want
emulsifies
to know how much is
is the asphalt, right?
how much
And-
residual there is, right?
Yes, because once it is applied, water will evaporate. Whatever is remaining is asphalt binder. Same thing that we talk about.
Sure.
So we still want
Sure.
that percentage of binder still there, right? So the composition is what we're looking for now. So viscosity, less or more, can be applied. What rate? That's one.
Right.
Second is distillation. So distillation will tell you how much of the binder is in emulsion.
Okay.
Is it meeting requirement? Is it
Okay.
60%? Is it meeting requirement of 60% binder out of
Okay.
100% or not?
Gotcha.
That's the composition. You basically just try to simulate the field, meaning we evaporate water, we try to find what is remaining there.
Okay.
With the distillation
All right.
process.
Okay.
And then once we have those done, whatever is residue, meaning whatever binder is remaining after distillation, we want to see the performance criteria is there. Is it soft? It has a good absolute viscosity. It has a good float properties. It has a good penetration value, softening point, elastic recovery. Some
So
of
you've
them.
got a bunch of tests that you're running on that. Once
Yeah.
you've evaluated its viscosity or its sprayability. Once you've distilled it or gotten the water off of it, now I've got a chunk
A binder.
of binder now that we're going to do some additional testing on to, like you said, evaluate all those different properties
That's
as well.
correct.
So what kind of time frame does that take? Now you've got, I don't know how long it takes to blow off the water. That, I mean, we still, how many days is that?
So if I start distillation in the morning to the end, I can finish a sample if it is just the viscosity, distillation, and then penetration or one of the tests, right?
Okay.
But because there are different grades, that also adds some test on the top of that,
okay.
and that will say another 1 day, right? And
Okay.
Basically, because we got a lot of sample, so it will not be done, every sample will not be done on the same day,
Okay.
Because there is a lot of sample. That's what I
Oh,
was
I
talking
can
about.
imagine. Your tables must be just full of
Yes,
samples.
and yeah, I will not invite you in the middle of summer because I don't have space for you as well. What I can say is, based on the number of sample, right now we are targeting, and we are very able to do that, is within 5 days in average, we are getting all these samples
Oh,
out.
okay. So
stamped
within
out.
kind of a standard week, you're able to get stuff in, and obviously it rotates. You're starting stuff today that will be finished next week, right?
Yep.
But within about 5 days, you've done all that work. And I mean, there's a lot of work involved here, getting all this stuff done. So okay, very good.
And when I say 5, this is as average, because
an
emulsion, it can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days.
Right.
PG, it may take, because it comes on Thursday, I will start. If it comes on Friday, I will not start because I cannot do RTF, I cannot do PAB overnight.
Oh, okay.
So I have to wait until Monday
till
to start,
Monday.
right? So we
Okay.
need to realize there is
A little bit.
there's a practicality
Yeah,
also involved
right,
there.
right. Plus or minus a little bit.
Yes, there.
All right, so we've done all our testing, right? We've gone through this whole thing of trying to figure all this, or gone through all these different tests. So you finished the testing. Your technicians now log it all into the system.
Right.
Where do the numbers go?
So that is where we have a system or software called LIMS.
Okay.
That's the Laboratory Information Management System.
Correct.
It's in long, but it's basically, we have a LIMS software.
Okay.
That's where every day a test is done, technician goes back and enters their data, complete it. So they will have a signature, they will
Okay, so
automatically
I know
generate.
who did it and when they finished it.
That's correct.
Okay,
And
okay.
I will know who else did if it is not certified as well. So we need to make sure that's there, right?
Gotcha,
So
gotcha,
and
gotcha.
not nobody that is not certified for that test never does that
Okay,
in our lab.
all right.
But basically, the technician and the numbers both are entered.
Okay.
The name and the number both are entered for that particular test.
Okay.
Once all these tests are done, our engineers, including our EITs, go back and see are they meeting the properties, right?
Okay,
And
so someone then goes back and puts an eyeball on all that
yes.
and sees, now I've got all my test data in one sheet. That's your test the result form, which I've seen a copy of. So all that's in there, and I know on that form it says if there's a minimum or a maximum,
Right.
and it'll show whether things pass or not.
That's
So then they will look at that, put eyeballs on it, and then they will say, okay, it's good to go.
More on that, because obviously they need to make a decision of pass or fail, whether
Okay.
it meets the spec or not, but we
Okay.
want to see the number makes sense or not. Because
okay.
we have to always recognize there is a human error. There may be a number with 0.31, enter at 0.32, right? Some typos can be there.
Or I just transposed a number.
The
or-
decimal places may
Sure,
be mixed,
absolutely.
right? So we
Okay.
want
Yeah,
to
I
have
do that all the time.
these check apps.
Okay, okay.
We also check all the information that has been entered, transferred to that sample is actually accurate. So we want to open the 202. We want to open the BOL. We want to verify each of the information before we stamp it. So
Okay.
that's why if the sample is tested today, let's say today at evening
Thursday,
today,
okay.
tomorrow morning I may go there, I may look into all the 202s, whatever entered, whatever extra comment, the email chain that
Okay.
the technician may
Right.
also say,
Right.
okay, this sample already looks diluted, or it may say there was a oil drops on the top of the can, right?
Okay.
Those information are also sent to us to the technician through our email. And
Okay,
we
that's
want
a
to
good
verify
okay.
all this information
Okay.
and even if it shows passing, sometimes it may not be a passing, meaning it may be 0.31 is the minimum, right? 0.3 is per M value, it may be 0.4. So it is passing, but 0.4 is a very unrealistic number.
Okay.
So we want to verify that number is accurate and that's real
Okay.
number there as
Okay.
well.
All
And
right.
it may be failing, then we want to say, can we redo it? And usually our technicians are already trained. If a test fails, they automatically go for a retest.
Oh, okay.
So that is already automated.
It's already in the process.
But if those two numbers are not matching, we want to do one more test, right? And that's the engineering judgment we always make.
So you guys are doing all this stuff internally even before, the sample would be sent out to somebody
That's
that say
correct.
that there's an issue.
Yes.
You've done your due diligence in house to check and make sure all your all your ducks are in a row, right? In as much as you possibly can
Yep.
to verify that. So
And that happens not only district sample, but also QM sample that comes from the supplier.
Okay.
Because they will usually provide us certificates of analysis.
Sure.
We want to look at what their properties in their lab, and we also use three different contract labs. We
Gotcha.
want to see their data. If there is something not matching, we do ourselves. So we want to verify all these three numbers are matching.
So you guys are terribly busy. You guys are just busy.
We want to be busy. We want to help all these 25 districts and the supplier, right? So
All right, so your engineers, okay, they've been through all the data. So I got my test result. It looks good. It passes I call it a smell test. It looks the numbers look realistic, and then where does it go from there?
So our record keeper or our any contact we have in the bond lab will usually send that to, if it is a project sample, or I will say whoever the sample came from, will report them as a primary.
So it goes back to whoever sent it.
Yes, so if it is a QM sample, and remember QM sample is still witnessed by TxDOT engineer
Right.
or a representative of Texas.
Right.
So we will have somebody, we have right now one contractor that goes and sees the sample witness.
Okay.
But anyway, when the test is done, it is stamped as pass or fail, we send that to supplier if it is a QM sample.
Okay.
It says, you have got this material certified for that long. If it is passing, if it is failing, it does not meet the spec, you did not get, send me a second sample, right? We will
Okay.
arrange that shipment.
Okay, so there's
This-
a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, in the district sample or the project sample, we usually primary contact will be the district. They will be there in the receiving end of our report, and we will say, and our supplier also are there. So
Okay.
supplier and districts both are copied when we are sending a report for district or project sample.
So the supplier, whoever that is, supplier A, they're getting some feedback too, and says, okay, here's my email. I can go back and I can check against
Yes.
my numbers internally and go, yeah, okay, we're in the same ballpark. Okay.
Yes, so the supplier and the district contacts both are in the same email. So that way, if there is a back and forth needs to happen,
Okay.
district and the supplier can carry on that conversation.
Gotcha.
We are in the loop there is.
Gotcha.
And some supplier do differently, but your district do differently. But yeah, there is an option. We are in the loop there.
Okay.
And if there is any information that supplier wants to find out more, just reply back to that email. We'll find all the information we could based
Okay.
on what we have in the 202,
Okay.
what we have in our email chain, and that's what we reply. And sometimes we seek out that information from district, and
Okay.
we are trying to help in the middle there, right? We are
Gotcha.
trying to help the district to seek all the information, and the supplier as well to provide them feedback. there.
Okay, good. So, we've got all these test results, and some of these numbers don't really mean anything to a normal person, right? You got G star, sine delta, M values, all this sort of viscosity stuff. If I don't know what, and again, they're going back to the people who understand that terminology, understand what that, but if just somebody wants to know more about it, how do they start? Is there a way someone can kind of learn any more about that? Do you guys have any information? I know the Asphalt Institute is out there, and there's lots of stuff out there on the internet, but does, can they call?
Yes, and that's what we have in the guidance also is if there is any question about any parameter,
Okay.
pass or fail, don't worry about
Okay.
only failing.
Okay.
If there is a passing, I don't know about this parameter, what does that really mean in terms of application, in terms of safety, in terms of performance?
So they can
Just
give you
reach
guys
out.
a call, and
We-
you
we
can
ha-
explain it to them.
Yes.
Okay.
We have provided our email, we have provided our phone number, so just call, text, any venue you want to reach out to us, we are welcoming that. as
Perfect.
well.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you coming out today. I've learned a bunch, and I guess I have a bigger appreciation of how busy you guys are.
Well, that's the whole idea, right? We want to make sure we are helping all the district, all the supplier supplier to get the certification, that they
Yeah.
can provide the material to TxDOT
Yeah.
project. So there is a benefit for TxDOT.
Right.
We have more supplier to produce the same material. We want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We also are working with the district to make sure all the samples are collected and shipped
Right.
right, and then in this right can, as we discussed. And that's the customer service. That's what we call is we are helping both sides. And if there is a question about a particular sample, and I think we can also talk about the failure, right? If there is a
Right.
failure, reactivation, what does that mean? There are so many options in the guidance. We can always go back there. If there is more question, reach out to us. That's what we
Perfect.
are here for.
Perfect, perfect. And what I was going to say, just, oh, and I know you guys, TxDOT is, MTD's been very active with our industry. We've got a liquid asphalt working group that meets monthly, I think.
Yes, we do
with
that.
our suppliers and TxDOT folks and industry folks to just kind of keep the conversation going and work on little issues that come up. And so you guys have been really, really helpful, I think, and very proactive in working with industry in that. So Pravat, a big thanks for coming out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for Jim for this invitation.
yeah.
It's the time to share this information.
Yeah, awesome,
And
awesome.
offer our help as well. At the
Very
same
good,
time.
very good. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. We'll give you some links in here for some of the things that are going on, some more access for some more information. Thank you so much for attending TXAPA Live today. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.